Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. This is a podcast where I read old books, sometimes fiction, sometimes non-fiction, in the most boring way I can, to try to help slow your spinning mind, enough for you to fall asleep in the most natural way possible. The stresses of life often follow us to bed and keep us company, but I'm here to distract you from them and help you drift away. But before you do fall asleep, if you find Sleepy Time Tales helpful and you'd like to support me, to keep it going out to you and thousands of your fellow insomniacs, please consider signing up on the Patreon at patreon.com/sleepytimetales. If monthly is a bit much, you can of course put a tip in the tip jar in the Ko-Fi. Both of these options are linked in the show notes. Or if you don't want to do it financially, you can support Sleepy Time Tales by just spreading the word. If you know someone struggling to get a good night's sleep, just tell them where to find it. And that's enough of that. Let's finish off The Blazing World by Margaret Cavendish, and there'll be a little surprise popped away at the end. So snuggle down, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and listen closely as I lead you down the path to sleep. We return again this week to the description of a new world called The Blazing World by Duchess of Newcastle Margaret Cavendish. The Empress expressed to her own countrymen, who were also her interpreters, to the rest of the princes that were present, that she would give them an entertainment at the darkest time of night, which being come the firestones were lighted, which made both air and seas appear of a bright shining flame, insomuch that they put all the spectators into an extreme fright, who verily believed they should all be destroyed, which the Empress perceiving caused all the lights of the firestones to be put out, and only showed herself in her garments of light. The birdmen carried her upon their backs into the air, and there she appeared as glorious as the sun. Then she was set down upon the seas again, and presently there was heard the most melodious and sweetest consort of voices, as ever there was heard out of the seas, which was made by the fishmen. This consort was answered by another, made by the birdmen in the air, so that it seemed as if sea and air had spoke, and answered each other by way of singing dialogues, or after the manner of those plays that are acted by singing voices. But when it was upon break of day, the Empress ended her entertainment, and at full daylight all the princes perceived that she went into the ship, wherein the prince and monarch of her native country was, the king of Esfi, with whom she had several conferences, and having assured him of the readiness of her assistance whensoever he required it, telling him withal that she wanted no intelligence, she went forth again upon the waters, and being in the midst of the circle made by those ships that were present, she desired them to draw somewhat nearer, that they might hear her speak, which being done, she declared herself in this following manner. Great, heroic, and famous monarchs, I come hither to assist the king of Esfi against his enemies, he being unjustly assaulted by many several nations, which would fain take away his hereditary rights and prerogative of the narrow seas, at which injustice heaven was most displeased, and for the injuries he received from his enemies, rewarded him with an absolute power, so that now he has become the head monarch of all this world. Which power though you may envy, yet you can no ways hinder him, for those that endeavour to resist his power shall only get loss for their labour, and no victory for their profit. Wherefore my advice to you all is, to pay him tribute justly and truly, that you may live peaceably and happily, and be rewarded with the blessings of heaven, which I wish for you from my soul. After the Empress had thus finished her speech to the princes of several nations of the world, she desired that in their ships might fall back, which, being done, her own fleet came into the circle, without any visible assistance of sails or tide, and herself being entered into her own ship, the whole fleet sunk immediately into the bottom of the seas, and left all the spectators in deep amazement. Neither would she suffer any of her ships to come above the waters, until she arrived into the blazing world. In time of the voyage, both the Empress's and the Duchess's soul were very gay and merry, and sometimes they would converse very seriously with each other. Amongst the rest of their discourses, the Duchess said she wondered much at one thing, which was that since Her Majesty had found out a passage out of the blazing world into the world she came from, did she not enrich that part of the world where she was born, at least her own family, though she had enough to enrich the whole world? The Empress's soul answered that she loved her native country and her own family, as well as any creature could do, and this was the reason why she would not enrich them. For, said she, not only particular families or nations, but all the world, their natures are such, that much gold and great store of riches makes them mad, insomuch as they endeavour to destroy each other for gold or riches' sake. The reason thereof is, said the Duchess, that they have too little gold and riches, which makes them so eager to have it. No, replied the Empress's soul, their particular covetousness is beyond all the wealth of the richest world, and the more riches they have, the more covetous they are, for their covetousness is infinite. But, said she, I would there could a passage be found out of the blazing world into the world whence you came, and I would willingly give you as much riches as you desired. The Duchess's soul gave Her Majesty humble thanks for her great favour, and told her that she was not covetous, nor desired any more wealth than what her lord and husband had before the civil wars. Neither, said she, should I desire it for my own, but my lord's posterity's sake. Well, said the Empress, I'll command my fishmen to use all their skill and industry to find out a passage into that world which your lord and husband is in. I do verily believe, answered the Duchess, that there will be no passage found into that world. But if there were any, I should not petition your Majesty for gold and jewels, but only for the elixir that grows in the midst of the golden sands, for to preserve life and health. But without a passage, it is impossible to carry away any of it. For whatsoever is material cannot travel like immaterial beings, such as souls and spirits are. Neither do souls require any such thing that might revive them, or prolong their lives. By reason they are unalterable. For were souls like bodies, then my soul might have had the benefit of that natural elixir that grows in your blazing world. I wish earnestly, said the Empress, that a passage might be found, and then both your lord and yourself should neither want wealth nor long life. Nay, I love you so well that I would make you as great and powerful a monarchess as I am of the blazing world. The Duchess's soul humbly thanked Her Majesty and told her that she acknowledged and esteemed her love beyond all things that are in nature. After this discourse they had many other conferences, which for brevity's sake I'll forbear to rehearse. At last, after several questions which the Empress's soul asked the Duchess, she desired to know the reason why she did take such delight, when she was joined to her body, in being singular both in accoutrement, behaviour, and discourse. The Duchess's soul answered, she confessed that it was extravagant, and beyond what was usual and ordinary, but yet her ambition being such that she would not be like others in anything. If it were possible, I endeavour, said she, to be as singular as I can, for it argues but a mean nature to imitate others, and though I do not love to be imitated, if I can possibly avoid it, yet rather than imitate others, I should choose to be imitated by others. For my nature is such that I had rather appear worse in singularity than better in the mode. If you were not a great lady, replied the Empress, you would never pass in the world for a wise lady, for the world would say your singularities are vanities. The Duchess's soul answered, she did not at all regard the censure of this or any other age concerning vanities. But said she, neither this present nor any of the future ages can or will truly say that I am not virtuous and chaste. For I am confident all that were or are acquainted with me, and all the servants which ever I had, will or can upon their oaths declare my actions no otherwise than virtuous. and certainly there's none even of the meanest degree, which have not their spies and witnesses, much more of those of the noblest sort, which seldom or never are without attendants, so that their faults, if they have any, will easily be known and as easily be divulged. Wherefore happy are those natures that are honest, virtuous, and noble, not only happy to themselves, but happy to their families. But, said the Empress, if you glory so much in your honesty and virtue, how comes it that you plead for dishonest and wicked persons in your writings? The Duchess answered, it was only to show her wit, not her nature. At last the Empress arrived into the blazing world, and coming to her imperial palace, you may sooner imagine than expect that I should express the joy which the Emperor had at her safe return, for he loved her beyond his soul, and there was no love lost, for the Empress equalled his affection with no less love to him. After the time of rejoicing with each other, the Duchess's soul begged leave to return to her noble lord, but the Emperor desired that before she departed, she would see how he had employed his time in the Empress's absence, for he had built stables and riding houses, and desired to have horses of manage, such as, according to the Empress's relation, the Duke of Newcastle had. The Emperor inquired of the Duchess the form and structure of her lord and husband's stables and riding house. The Duchess answered his Majesty that they were but plain and ordinary, but said she, had my lord wealth, I am sure he would not spare it in rendering his buildings as noble as could be made. Hereupon the Emperor showed the Duchess the stables he had built, which were most stately and magnificent. Among the rest, there was one double stable that held 100 horses on a side. The main building was of gold, lined with several sorts of precious materials. The roof was arched with agates. The sides of walls were lined with cornelian, and the floor was paved with amber. The mangers were mother of pearl. The pillars, as also the middle aisle or walk of the stables, were of crystal. The front and gate were of turquoise, most neatly cut and carved. The riding house was lined with sapphires, topazes, and the like. The floor was all of golden sand, so finely sifted that it was extremely soft, and not in the least hurtful to the horse's feet, and the door and the frontispiece were of emeralds curiously carved. After the view of these glorious and magnificent buildings, which the Duchess's soul was much delighted withal, she resolved to take her leave. But the Emperor desired her to stay yet some short time more, for they both loved her company so well that they were unwilling to have her depart so soon. Several conferences and discourse passed between them. Amongst the rest, the Emperor desired her advice on how to set up a theatre for plays. The Duchess confessed her ignorance in this art, telling His Majesty that she knew nothing of erecting theatres or scenes, but what she had by an immaterial observation, when she was with the Empress's soul, in the chief city of entering into one of their theatres, where the Empress could give as much account to His Majesty as herself. But both the Emperor and the Empress told the Duchess that she could give directions how to make plays. The Duchess answered that she had as little skill to form a play after the mode as she had to paint or make a scene for show. But you have made plays, replied the Empress. Yes, answered the Duchess, I intended them for plays, but the wits of these present condemned them as incapable of being represented or acted, because they were not made up according to the rules of art, though I dare say that the descriptions are as good as any they have writ. The Emperor asked whether the property of plays was not to describe the several humours, actions, and fortunes of mankind. "'Tis so," answered the Duchess. "Why then," replied the Emperor, "the natural humours, actions, and fortunes of mankind are not done by the rules of art." "But," said the Duchess, "it is the art and method of our wits to despise all descriptions of wit, humour, actions, and fortunes that are without such artificial rules." The Emperor asked, "Are those good plays that are made so methodically and artificially?" The Duchess answered, They were good according to the judgment of the age, or mode of the nation, but not according to her judgment. For truly, said she, in my opinion, their plays will prove a nursery for whining lovers, and not an academy or school for wise, witty, noble, and well-behaved men. But I, replied the emperor, desire such a theatre as may make wise men, and will have such descriptions as are natural, not artificial. If your majesty be of that opinion, said the duchess's soul, then my plays may be acted in your blazing world, when they cannot be acted in the blinking world of wit, and the next time I come to visit your majesty, I shall endeavour to order your majesty's theatre, to present such plays as my wit is capable to make. Then the empress told the duchess that she loved a foolish farce added to a wise play. The duchess answered that no world in nature had fitter creatures for it than the blazing world. For she said the lows men, the bird men, the spider and fox men, the ape men and satyrs appear in a farce extraordinarily pleasant. Hereupon both the emperor and empress entreated the duchess's soul to stay so long with them, till she had ordered her theatre and made plays and farces fit for them, for they only wanted that sort of recreation. But the duchess's soul begged their majesties to give her leave to go into her native world, for she longed to be with her dear lord and husband, promising that after a short time she would return again. Which being granted, though with much difficulty, she took her leave with all civility and respect, and so departed from their majesties. After the duchess's return into her own body, she entertained her lord, when he was pleased to hear such kind of discourses with foreign relations. But he was never displeased to hear of the empress's kind commendations, and of the characters she was pleased to give of him to the emperor. Amongst other relations, she told him all that had passed between the empress and the several monarchs of that world whither she went with the empress, and how she had subdued them to pay tribute and homage to the monarch of that nation or kingdom to which she owed both her birth and education. She also related to her lord what magnificent stables and riding houses the emperor had built, and what fine horses were in the blazing world, of several shapes and sizes, and how exact their shapes were in each sort, and of many various colours and fine marks, as if they had been painted by art, with such coats or skins, that they had a far greater gloss and smoothness than satin. Were there but a passage out of the blazing world into this, said she, you should not only have some of these horses, but such materials as the emperor has, to build your stables and riding houses withal, and so much gold that I should never repine at your noble and generous gifts. The duke smilingly answered her that he was sorry there was no passage between the two worlds. But, said he, I have always found an obstruction to my good fortunes. One time the duchess chanced to discourse with some of her acquaintance of the empress of the blazing world, who asked in what pastimes and recreations her majesty did most delight in. The duchess answered that she spent most of her time in the study of natural causes and effects, which was her chief delight and pastime, and that she loved to discourse sometimes with the most learned persons of that world, and to please the emperor and his nobles, who were all of the royal race. She went often abroad to take the air, but seldom in the daytime, always at night, as if it might be called night. For, said she, the nights there are as light as days, by reason of the numerous blazing stars, which are very splendorous. Only their light is whiter than the sun's light, and as the sun's light is hot, so their light is cool, not so cool as our twinkling starlight, nor is their sunlight so hot as ours, but more rate. And that part of the blazing world where the empress resides is always clear and never subject to any storms, tempests, fogs, or mists, but as only refreshing dews that nourish the earth. The air of it is sweet and temperate, and as I said before, as much light in the sun's absence as in its presence, which makes the time we call night more pleasant than the day. And sometimes the empress goes abroad by water in barges, sometimes by land in chariots, and sometimes on horseback. Her royal chariots are very glorious. The body is one entire green diamond, The 4 small pillars that bear the top cover are 4 white diamonds, cut in the form thereof. The top or roof of the chariot is 1 entire blue diamond, and the 4 corners of great springs of rubies. The seat is made of cloth of gold, stuffed with ambergris, beaten small. The chariot is drawn by 12 unicorns, whose trappings are all chains of pearl. And as for her barges, they are only of gold. Her guard of state, for she needs none for security, there being no rebels or enemies, consists of giants, but they seldom wait on their majesties abroad, because their extraordinary height and bigness does hinder their prospect. Her entertainment when she is upon the water is the music of the fish and bird men, and by land are horse and foot matches, for the empress takes much delight in making race matches with the emperor and the nobility. Some races are between the fox and ape men, which sometimes the satyrs strive to outrun, and some are between the spider men and lice men. And there are several flight matches between the several sorts of birdmen, and the several sorts of flymen, and swimming matches between the several sorts of fishmen. The emperor, empress, and their nobles also take great delight to have collations, for in the blazing world there are most delicious fruits of all sorts, and some such as in this world were never seen or tasted, for there are most tempting sorts of fruit. After their collations are ended, they dance, and if they be upon the water, they dance upon the water, there lying so many fishmen so close and thick together, as they can dance very evenly and easily upon their backs, and need not fear drowning. Their music, both vocal and instrumental, is, according to their several places, upon the water. It is of water instruments, as shells filled with water, and so moved by art. It is a very sweet and delightful harmony, and those dances which they dance upon the water are for the most part such as we in this world call swimming dances, where they do not lift up their feet high. In lawns or upon plains they have wind instruments, but much better than those in our world, and when they dance in the woods they have horn instruments, which although they are of a sort of wind instruments, yet they are of another fashion than the former. In their houses they have such instruments as are somewhat like our viols, violins, theorbos, lutes, citharins, guitars, harpsichords, and the like, but yet so far beyond them that the difference cannot well be expressed, and as their manner of dancing and their music is different, so is their manner or way of dancing. In these and the like recreations the emperor, empress, and the nobility pass their time. The epilogue to the reader. By this poetical description you may perceive that my ambition is not only to be empress, but authoress of a whole world, and that the worlds I have made, both the blazing and the other philosophical world, mentioned in the first part of this description, are framed and composed of the most pure, that is, the rational parts of matter, which are the parts of my mind, which creation was more easily and suddenly effected than the conquests of the 2 famous monarchs of the world, Alexander and Caesar. Neither I have made such disturbances and caused so many dissolutions of particulars, otherwise named deaths, as they did. For I have destroyed but some few men in a little boat, which died through the extremity of cold, and that by the hand of justice which was necessitated to punish their crime, in stealing away a young and beauteous lady. And in the formation of those worlds I take more delight and glory than ever Alexander or Caesar did in conquering this terrestrial world. And though I have made my blazing world a peaceable world, allowing but one religion, one language, and one government, yet could I make another world as full of factions, divisions, and wars, as this is of peace and tranquility, and the rational figures of my mind might express as much courage to fight as Hector and Achilles had, and be as wise as Nestor, as eloquent as Ulysses, and be as beautiful as Helen. But I, esteeming peace before war, wit before policy, honesty before beauty, instead of the figures of Alexander, Caesar, Hector, Achilles, Nestor, Ulysses, Helen, etc., chose rather the figure of honest Margaret Newcastle, which now I would not change for all this terrestrial world. And if any would like the world I have made and be willing to be my subjects, They may imagine themselves such, and they are such. I mean, in their minds, fancies, or imaginations. But if they cannot endure to be subjects, they may create worlds of their own, and govern themselves as they please. But yet let them have a care, not to prove unjust usurpers, and to rob me of mine. For concerning the philosophical world, I am empress of it myself. And as for the blazing world, it having an empress already, who rules it with great wisdom and conduct, which empress is my dear platonic friend, I shall never prove so unjust, treacherous, and unworthy to her, as to disturb her government, much less to depose her from her imperial throne for the sake of any other, but rather choose to create another world for another friend. Finis. Okay, that's done. If you would like to read The Blazing World on your own, you can, of course, find it on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. We are ending a little bit early here today, so I'm going to throw a little bit of a bonus here at the end. So if you've made it, here's a selection of poetry from readings I've done for the Patreon. It's a new month, so we're starting with the work of a new poet, Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for the doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you, except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. A Code of Morals. Now Jones had left his new wed bride to keep his house in order, and hired away to the Harbour hills above the Afghan border, to sit on a rock with a heliograph, but ere he left he taught his wife the working of the code that sets the miles at naught. And love had made him very sage, as nature made her fair, so Cupid and Apollo linked per heliograph the pair. At dawn across the Harbour hills he flashed her counsel wise, at e'en the sunset bore her husband's homilies. He warned her against seductive youths in scarlet clad and gold, as much as against the blandishments paternal of the old, but kept his gravest warnings, or hereby the ditty hangs, that snowy-haired Lothario Lieutenant General Bangs. 'Twas General Bangs, with aid and staff, who titupped on the way, when they beheld a heliograph tempestuously at play. They thought of border risings, and of stations sacked and burnt, so stopped to take the message down, and this is what they learnt. Dash dot 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 dash dot twice, the general swore. Was ever a general officer addressed as dear before? My love, our faith, my duck, Gadzooks, my darling, Popsy Wop, spirit of the great Lord Wolsey, who is on that mountain top. The artless aide-de-camp was mute, the gilded staff was still, as dumb with pent-up mirth they booked that message from the hill. For clear as summer lightning flare, the husband's warning ran, don't dance or ride with General Bangs, a most immoral man. At dawn across the Hunnam hills he flashed her counsel wise, But howsoever love be blind, the world at large hath eyes. With damnatory dot and dash he heliographed his wife, some interesting details of the general's private life. The artless aide-de-camp was mute, the shining staff was still, and red and ever redder grew the general's shaven gill. And this is what he said at last, his feelings matter not. I think we've tapped a private line, hi, three's about there, trot. All honour unto Bangs, for ne'er did Jones thereafter know, by word or act official, who read off that Helio. But the tale is on the frontier, and from Memchi to Multan, they know the worthy general as that most immoral man. This week, we're reading the work of Charlotte Bronte. Presentiment. Sister, you've sat there all day. Come to the hearth a while. The wind so wildly sweeps away, the clouds so darkly pile. That open book has lain unread for hours upon your knee. You've never smiled nor turned your head. What can you, sister, see? Come hither, Jane, look down the field. How dense a mist creeps on. The path, the hedge are both concealed. Even the white gate is gone. No landscape through the fog I trace, no hill with pastures green. All featureless is nature's face, all masked in clouds her mien. Scarce is the rustle of a leaf heard in our garden now. The earth grows old, its days wax brief, the tresses leave its brow. The rain drives fast before the wind, the sky is blank and grey. O Jane, what sadness fills the mind on such a dreary day. You think too much, my sister dear, you sit too long alone. What though November days be drear, full soon will they be gone. I swept the hearth and placed your chair, come Emma sit by me. Our own fireside is never drear, though late and wintry wane this year, though rough the night may be. The peaceful glow of our fireside imparts no peace to me. My thoughts would rather wander wide than rest, dear Jane, with thee. I'm on a distant journey bound, and if about my heart too closely kindred ties were bound, 'twas break when forced to part. Soon November will be o'er. Well have you spoken, Jane. My forebodings tell me more, for me I know my presage sure, they'll ne'er return again. Ere long, nor sun nor storm to me will bring or joy or gloom. They reach not that eternity which soon will be my home. 8 months are gone. The summer sun sets in a glorious sky. A quiet field, all green and lone, receives its rosy dye. Jane sits upon a shaded stile, alone she sits there now. Her head rests on her hand the while, and thought o'ercasts her brow. She's thinking of one winter's day, a few short months ago, when Emma's bier was borne away, o'er wastes of frozen snow. She's thinking how that drifted snow dissolved in spring's first gleam, and how her sister's memory now fades, even as fades a dream. The snow will whiten earth again, but Emma comes no more. She left midwinter's sleet and rain, this world for heaven's far shore. On Beulah's hills she wanders now, on Eden's tranquil plain. To her shall Jane hereafter go, she ne'er shall come to Jane. Regret. Long ago I wished to leave the house where I was born. Long ago I used to grieve, my home seemed so forlorn. In other years its silent rooms were filled with haunting fears. Now their very memory comes, charged with tender tears. Life and marriage I have known, things once deemed so bright. Now how utterly is flown every ray of light. Mid the unknown sea of life, I no blessed isle have found. At last through all its wild wave strife, my bark is homeward bound. Farewell dark and rolling deep, farewell foreign shore. Open and unclouded sweep thou glorious realm before. Yet though I had safely passed that weary vexed main, one loved voice through surge and blast could call me back again. Though the soul's bright morning rose are a paradise for me, William, even from heaven's repose, I turn invoked by thee. Storm nor surge should e'er arrest my soul exulting then. All my heaven was once thy breast, would it were mine again. For this month, we're going to the work of Mary Darby Robinson. Female Fashions for 1799. A form, as any taper fine, a head like half-pint basin, where golden cords and bands entwine as rich as fleece of jason. A pair of shoulders strong and wide, like country clown enlisting, bare arms long dangling by the side, and shoes of ragged listing. Cravats like towels, thick and broad, long tippets made of bearskin, muffs that a Russian might applaud, and rouge to spoil a fair skin. Long petticoats to hide the feet, silk hose with clocks of scarlet, a load of perfume sickening sweet, bought of Parisian violet. A bush of hair the brow to shade, sometimes the eyes to cover, a necklace that might be displayed by our Tahitian lover, a bowl of straw to deck the head, like porringer unmeaning, a bunch of poppies flaming red, with motley ribbons streaming, bare ears on either side the head, like wood wild savage satyr, tinted with deep vermilion red, to shame the blush of nature. Red elbows, gauzy gloves that add an icy covering merely, a wadded coat the shape to pad, like Dutch woman, or nearly. Such is caprice, but lovely kind, oh let each mental feature proclaim the labour of the mind, and leave your charms to nature. Echo to him who complains. Oh fly thee from the shades of night, where the loud tempests yelling rise, where horror wings her sullen flight beneath the bleak and lurid skies. As the pale lightning swiftly gleams o'er the scorched wood, thy well-known form more radiant than an angel seems, contending with the ruthless storm. I see the scowling witch Despair drink the big tear that scalds thy cheek, while through the dark and turbid air the screams of Harvard envy break. From the cold mountains flinty steep, I hear the dashing waters roar. Ah, turn thee, cease to weep, thou hast no reason to deplore. See fell despair expiring fall, see envy from thy glances start, no more shall howling blasts appall, or withering grief corrode thy heart. See friendship from her azure eye, drops the fond balm for every pain. She comes the offspring of the sky, to raise the troubles of the brain. January 1795. Pavement slippery, people sneezing, lords in ermine, beggars freezing, titled gluttons, dainties carving, genius in a garret starving. Lofty mansions warm and spacious, courtiers clinging and voracious, masters scarce the wretched heeding, gallant soldiers fighting, bleeding. Wives who laugh at passive spouses, theatres and meeting houses, balls where simpering misses languish, hospitals and groans of anguish. Arts and sciences bewailing, commerce drooping, credit failing. Placemen mock, subjects loyal, separations, weddings royal. Authors who can't earn a dinner, many a subtle rogue a winner. Fugitives for shelter seeking, misers hoarding, tradesmen breaking. Taste and talents quite deserted, all the laws of truth perverted. Arrogance our merit soaring, merit silently deploring. Ladies gambling night and morning, fools the works of genius scorning. Ancient dames for girls mistaken, youthful damsels quite forsaken. Some in luxury delighting, more in talking than in fighting. Lovers old and beau decrepit, lordlings empty and insipid. Poets, painters and musicians, lawyers, doctors, politicians. Pamphlets, newspapers and odes, seeking fame by different roads. Gallant souls with empty purses, generals only fit for nurses. Schoolboys smit with martial spirit, taking place of veteran merit. Honest men who can't get places, knaves who show unblushed faces. Ruin hastened, peace retarded, Candace burned, and art rewarded. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to follow or subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. Good night, and sweet dreams.